Hi everyone, my name is Justin Odisho, and in this Adobe Premiere Pro CC tutorial, I'm going to share 5 little editing tricks and techniques that can have a big impact on your final video projects. So I've got a couple random clips on the timeline to demonstrate these 5 different things. And to begin, the first one is when you're working with text. So let's say I'm working on a clip like this, and I grab my text tool and I type something over top that I want to say. So let's say I type out NYC, New York City, that's where this clip was shot. We can change the font to be whatever we want, so I'll just use a cool font like Futura in the effects control panel with the text highlighted, and I'll make it a lot bigger just for example's sake. You can also go to Window Essential Graphics. That'll open up the real powerful tools here, so we can center things and really make them as big or small as we want. But let's say we have that there, it says NYC. Now the problem when you have text over solid video like this is it kind of gets lost in the detail. The video in the background is sharp and in focus, the text is sharp and in focus, and the eye doesn't really know what to focus on properly. So a really useful, subtle trick that I find myself using often is, one, you can lower the opacity a little bit. So if I turn off that toggle animation button because I don't want to add keyframes to animate anything, if we just lower the opacity to, let's say, 70%, it can dim the background a little bit, almost adding a layer of thin blackness to make the text stand out. And another thing you can do is go into the effects panel and search for one called Gaussian blur. This will add a slight glassy out of focus feel to the background. So I just clicked, drag that onto the video, and I can increase the blurriness amount just pretty gently. I'll choose repeat edge pixels just so I don't get that black shadow. Another thing you can play with to get some glassy looks is adjusting the blending mode on the actual text. So right now it's set to normal, but if we set it to something like overlay, you get a similar glassy type of feel, which you might see in different type of videos as well. So you can use that for text, icons, pictures, and thumbnails, a variety of things. Next up, we have, if you're working with a photograph on the timeline and you want to cut to it in some way, maybe incorporate it in some sort of a slideshow, one cool thing you can do is, you could set up the photo to just be solid still in the frame, maybe add some text and captions. But more often than not, I find myself filling the frame with it, and instead of just keeping it solid, plain, you can't tell if it's a freeze frame or not, adding some very gentle motion keyframes to bring some life into it. So if we go to this scale keyframe and turn it on, it'll add a diamond wherever our playhead is. So what I'll do is I'll just pull this all the way back to the beginning, and then I'll add another keyframe that perhaps goes down 5. So we zoom out of the picture a little bit. I'll take that keyframe and drag it all the way to the end of the clip. And if I play that back now, when I cut away to the picture, it has this gentle back and forth motion that usually fits in a lot better within sequences and projects. Another thing you can do is right click on these keyframes, and instead of just moving in a smooth linear progression from A to B, you can do things like ease in or ease out of certain points, and that'll give even a little bit more of a gentle feel as it eases in to its final position. So that's a really useful, very simple, common sense type of technique to have. Third is sound and ducking. So let's say I'm talking over a clip and I don't want to hear all the city noise and the car horns beeping and stuff that was captured in this original clip. What I can do is I'll actually make this a little bit bigger, so I have some room to work on this track. And this little line here allows me to adjust the volume of the clip by default. So by default, it's at 0, just the basic default levels. But if I hold Command on my keyboard, you'll see it turn into an arrow with a plus signal. And that'll allow me to click and add a keyframe or a dot. Then I can add another dot a little bit down the way. And now I have 2 separate line segments that I can take and pull this second one down, creating a gradual ramp from regular volume to -15 decibels or whatever I decided it to be. And you can keyframe some gentle ducking animation of the volume to go from 1 point to slightly dipping under if you were to start narrating over it and you wanted to mix and blend those two soundtracks together. So that can be really useful for documentary, different type of video editing work. You can also see the same thing right here in your effect control panel. Instead of doing it using the line, you can just simply add keyframes like normal. But when you're working with multiple audio clips stacked up in front of each other, it can often be easy to work visually and see how things happen. And also don't forget, you can fade audio in or add keyframes on the audio that you're trying to bring in to make it go from quiet to loud. Speaking of sound, the fourth thing that relates to sound is sound design. Now, this is a whole separate topic that we could do a whole video about, but just to open up your mind to this functional tool is you don't have to just rely on the sounds that you were captured in camera. Let's say we're working on a slightly rainy scene. I think in this clip, it was just starting to rain, but not really. But I can exaggerate that effect by finding rainy sound effects and adding them on the track as well. So if you actually are making a YouTube video, there's the free YouTube audio library of sound effects. You can just Google that. So here's two that I've downloaded and dragged into my project media bin. This one's called Light Rain, and I can have it go as long as I want, but basically it makes it sound a lot more rainy. You could even find sound effects like walking on cobblestones. These are all just different things. Sound design is a whole separate beast, but if you've never considered the fact that this whole lower symmetrical half of the timeline containing audio not only can be for the natural audio and voice and music, you can also place and arrange sound like you would as intensively for video segments of your project. So that can actually be half of the beauty or half of the greatness of a piece of visual work. Fifth and lastly, let's end off with a really simple, easily digestible one. If you're ever working with a clip that has pretty clear blue open skies, a really great way to bring focus in on whatever the subject is and make your color grading pop whatever way that you choose to color grade is going to the Lumetri color panel and heading over to the vignette section. So what a vignette is basically just a shadow around the corners and edges. Some cameras, it might get this naturally if there's like a lens hood or depending on the lens it's using. And it's kind of just an aesthetic choice in my opinion. Some people might not like it, but I really like and enjoy the aesthetics of a nice vignette over a clear blue sky. But you can adjust the amount to be stronger. The midpoint, as you can see, we'll bring it in. This looks unnatural and fake, but if you bring the midpoint out a little bit, it kind of just singes the edges and the corners a little bit. And what happens when you're working with a solid colored sky like this is, one, it brings focus in on the subject, and two, any creative color adjustments that you were to do after that point kind of get a better gradation of flow. So that kind of might not make sense, but let's say I apply a LUT onto this clip. So these are just different LUTs that I've made. Any LUT that you apply, it's going to have a better amount of flow. So if I zoom in on this corner here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. See how it kind of goes from dark to light? It's got a good contrast. If I was to remove the vignette, it's kind of just like a solid flat color. You lose that black to white gray in the middle area that any sort of color correction would have a chance to manipulate. So it's a very subtle, up to your taste thing. But one thing I found through all my years of editing different clips is that a vignette usually works well on solid, clear blue skies where you want to maybe pull some focus into the subject if you enjoy the look of vignettes. So those are 5 really particular, random, subtle things that I've picked up over my years of video editing that I want to pass on to you in this video that I think are really useful to keep in your arsenal of knowledge. If you enjoyed this video, definitely leave a like on it below. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite, or if you've got your own tricks and techniques that you've picked up that you want to share. If you are new to my channel, make sure you subscribe so you can stay tuned for all of my new videos. And definitely go follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and social media at Justin O'D Show. I've got a ton of other great things to check out on my channel and profiles, and if you want to reach out to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next ones.